Members, the House has resumed and we are on the third reading of the Rugby World Cup 2011 Empowering Bill. At the break we were listening to the dulcet tones of David Shearer. And we have,
thank you,
8 minutes remaining for members to enjoy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate that. And after dinner, I'm feeling even more dulcet, so I'm going to up the dulcet scale here. I was talking about before the dinner break, Mr. Speaker, about the licensing regulations as Part 5 of this bill, and I want to resume on that because obviously when we talked about this when we were in committee stages about the difficulties in alcohol licensing, and particularly the problems that emerged after the Eden Park fiasco. Eden Park is in my electorate. I spoke to a huge number of people in my electorate who were concerned about a repeat performance of that. There were bottles, there was scuffles, there was fighting, drinking on the streets, and what they certainly did not want, and I think what they deserve not to get, was a more liberal type of more liberal climate by which alcohol could be served and sold even more easily. And it's for that reason I voted, because on this side of the House we had a conscience vote, voted against the Part 5 of this Act. A couple of words on the key areas that I disliked about it most of all. It does liberalise the ability to sell alcohol in and around that area. It does have an impact on the local residents. It means that if you don't like the alcohol being sold, you only have actually 5 days to protest against it. It shortens the period. It basically contracts the period that's obligated under the Sale of Liquor Act 1989. And for that reason, it seems to me that with all the preparations that's going on around the development of the World Cup, it seems an extraordinarily ad hoc thing to do with not really too much planning when you try and have to shorten a process, a well-received and well-acknowledged process in order to sell alcohol more easily. The police definitely opposed this originally. I think there were some discussions behind closed doors which made them ultimately change their mind. St John's Ambulance came out against it, and I believe that they were right to. And as I say before, why actually do we really need this particular part to make this more liberal, when in fact we have an authority, a regulating process, and planning that has been ongoing for many months, Mr. Speaker. One thing that I think in a way exemplifies the fears that residents around Eden Park, but it could be anywhere else. It could be around the other areas where the World Cup games are going to be played. Around about 2000, it was 12 years ago, so maybe 1998. There was actually a law which forbade the holding of 2 games of rugby on the same day at Eden Park. It also had some restrictions on how many cricket games could be played in that era, in that time as well. And the real reason for that was that they knew that 2 games of rugby with an excitable crowd drinking heavily might mean that there was going to be troubles. Last year in 2009, without notification, that was changed by the council. So now you are allowed at Eden Park by council, without any reference to the residents, you are now allowed to actually hold 2 games of rugby, or rugby league as it was a couple of weeks ago. And the residents said, how did that happen without us having any say or any input when the Environment Court in 1998 decided that that was an unwise thing to do? And the answer is, Mr. Speaker, the answer is that it was held without due process. The decision was taken behind closed doors, and it was taken for all the wrong reasons without consultation to the local people. That's the very reason now today I'm opposing, or I don't agree with, Part 5, because what it does, it truncates, it shortens the period by which people can actually protest and object to this particular piece of legislation going through. It will mean that people have a more liberalised alcohol environment in and around them, with the greater potential for trouble and the less ability to be able to protest against them. And so they reflect back on what was the situation in 1998 and what the situation is today, and the process by which that was changed, and say, we don't want processes like this to be put back into legislation so that people can override the alcohol, the Sale of Liquor Act 1989 in that way. We want to have a robust system by which we're able to protest against alcohol being sold in our area. And it's that reason, Mr. Speaker, that I come to the last part. What I want to talk to was actually Part 4, which is about, and the reason that the Labour Party is opposing this legislation has got nothing to do with trying to help the passage of the bill through Parliament. It's got nothing to do with any sort of reticence that we might have about the support of the Rugby World Cup. Indeed, as many of our speakers have said, it was us who had the aspiration, the word that the National Party likes to use, the aspiration to bring the World Cup, in fact, back here. But the real reason, Mr. Speaker, for our opposition to this bill was because it gives the Minister, in consultation, but we're not quite sure exactly what that consultation might be. It might be a phone call, it might be a chat in the aisles, who knows what it might be, but it gives Mr. McCulley the ability to override the legislation and enact policies that the authority, the established authority which is set up under this bill, may have ruled against. Here is an authority that we've set up with all the right types of safeguards, with the type of seniority in this authority that we need to have, and yet we have given a minister the ability to override that decision that authority might make. I go back to, it's that ability, it's going back to the experience that we have seen in the Mount Eden area and the Sandringham area around Eden Park, which we want to guard against happening once again. So, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I'd like to say that while we support very much the need to have facilitating legislation to make this World Cup go well, be a success, to bring in and to advertise New Zealand, be a standard, if you like, for a bearer for New Zealand that people can see and really see something that brings out the best in New Zealand. I think we go too far, in my own opinion, certainly in Part 4, that the Labour Party is opposing en masse.
I regret to advise the member that his time has expired.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker.